time to tantalize your earbuds with creative makers and shakers. It's Creative Living, the podcast with Jane Klaus.
Welcome to Creative Living, where we help you live your most creative life. I'm Jane Klaus, and I know you all have a love for all things creative. That's why you're here. And your craft room, your workshop, your makerspace, your studio shows your big enthusiasm for the makers movement. So today, we are jumping feet first into the world of crafting and organizing. Yeah, I said it. We're going to tackle the daunting task of cleaning up your craft room, and we're going to learn how to transform your creative space into a haven of productivity and inspiration. Okay, so if you will, let's just picture it. Come with me. Picture a creative space. As we walk into your craft room, we're greeted by a kaleidoscope of colors and textures. Supplies are just strewn everywhere. It really is a delightful chaos. You've got canvases leaning up against the walls. You've got yarn spilling from baskets, and you've got half-finished projects on every surface available. But amidst all that clutter, there is a sense of magic and possibility. I mean, each item holds the promise of a new project and new adventure. I mean, it really is a haven of creativity, but it is also a tad bit overwhelming. But don't lose hope. There is always time for transformation. With a little effort, with the right organizational strategies, even the most chaotic spaces can be transformed into oases of inspiration. So grab your favorite beverage, roll up your sleeves, and let's get organized and reclaim your craft room. Joining us to help us clean up the craft room is author of Simplify Your Life, 8 Simple Principles to Turning Your Chaos into Calm. And she's a professional organizer. Say hi to Andrea Brundage. Andrea, can you help us here? Can you help us?
Absolutely, Jane. It's so good to see you this morning.
It's so great to have you, a professional organizer. Let's hit that book one more time. Simplify Your Life, 8 Simple Principles to Turn Your Chaos into Calm. And that really covers all of your life, your home, your garage, every aspect of it. Today, we're going to focus on our maker spaces. So a messy craft room is not unique. It's actually common among us crafters. I mean, we struggle with the challenge of maintaining order, but we also know that a messy craft room is a reflection of our vibrant imagination. So with that love for our creativity in the craft room, what are some top challenges that you see when people are trying to organize that space?
The biggest challenge with creative spaces is often the number of crafts going on at the same time. So we might sew, we might paint, we might scrapbook. Yes, some people still are scrapbooking, or at least have all of the supplies that go with that. There are many mediums that go into your crafts, as you know. And what happens very often is they are all intermingled, and my clients walk into their space and they literally will often turn around and walk out because it's so chaotic that they can't focus on one thing at a time to actually start and finish a project. I've had some clients who are super talented, like yourself, who have actually turned their craft room into a dump zone.
Oh,
Could not enter it. And so pulling those things out and actually setting up systems around the particular projects is super helpful.
I love the idea of setting up systems around particular projects. So let's tackle that first thing, and that's the declutter. If you can't walk in, I mean, I guess feels like a little hoarderish, but I get it when you are creative, especially if you do multiple things, because it fuels your soul. You like to be in this chaotic mess. But let's talk about decluttering. What's the first step? Are there ways to maximize storage if we want to keep it all?
Well, keeping it all is kind of a stretch because let's be honest, we go to different stations in our lives and we need to figure out, are we ever going to do this craft again? the scrapbooking, for example. Am I ever going to actually sit down and do these crafts? So if we can honestly look at that and say, yes, I think I am going to do that, then we set up a place for those things. If we look at the stuff and say it's paint, paint doesn't stay alive forever. And very often there are empty tubes, half empty tubes, multiples of the same color. How can we pare that down and condense and compartmentalize the projects based on what we like to do? And that's the first step. And even prior to that, we just go back to what mom and grandma used to say. Just start in a corner and work your way out. There's no magic to this. It's actually just dig in, let's get into our elbows and let's get this stuff taken care of. So this can be a space that's more inviting for you and it actually will support you.
Oh, right. It will support you. Yeah. Roll up those sleeves. I always say you have to get messy before you get clean. And it stinks totally pulling it out of the closet or pulling it out of the drawers and organizing. I remember as a kid, like you said, mom and grandma, I would have to clean out my closet, my toy closet or my closet in my bedroom every couple of months. And I didn't want to do it. But when it was over, everything was put back in its spot and it was very organized and I knew where things were. And I felt a sense of accomplishment when I did that. And that's probably what we would feel in our craft room if we were to keep it organized. So if we're talking about condensing, combining, and compartmentalizing, which is what I do in my head. But if we're talking about those three things, the psychological benefits to doing those have got to be huge, right?
It actually is huge. And it actually, what I call it, creates space around you so that you can actually be more creative, believe it or not. Because very often, like I said, we walk in and we're just like, oh my goodness, I'll take all of this to the dining room table, right? And so we pull out of this beautiful studio craft room area because we're already overwhelmed. So if we can compartmentalize and pull things out that we're going to work on this day, this week, this month, and set the others aside, you actually have more airspace to be creative.
But Andrea, I always say more is more and less is a bore because I want to have more and I want to put it everywhere, go big or go home. So really, how much do we need? How much is enough? Because how do I curb that more is more and less is a bore mentality I have?
Well,
Like read my book.
Read my book. But some people like the chaos, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Okay, so let's be honest here. Some people crave that type of energy in their space. Don't organize if you don't feel the need to. All right. So it's not a one size fits all. But if you walk into your craft room and you feel like you're spinning and you can't manage to get things done, then perhaps it's time to get really honest about, okay, I need to spend some time putting my paints with my paints and getting rid of things that I'm no longer going to do. I don't want to do those projects anymore. And speaking of which, a lot of projects like sewing projects and such, you can actually contract those things out and have someone else finish them for you if they're that important to you. So there are other options, but really, getting clear about what you want to do today going forward.
So I love the idea of organizing. I'm not going to lie. I do like everything has a place and every place has a thing. I get the idea of my more is more and less is a bore is fun and that's overwhelming, but kind of managing that more. Because I think you can have more if it's an organized more. So are there solutions you have with perhaps organizing with labels or specific boxes or different kind of organizing solutions that you would recommend for somebody who likes more is more?
For sure. So I like clear bins because we want to be able to see, obviously, what's in them and a nice label on it. You don't have to spend a ton of time making beautiful labels, although craft people do love to make labels. But you can make it as fun as you want, or you could just put a sticky note on there in the meantime while you're getting organized so you know what you have. One of the reasons this is super important is you can then hopefully visualize how much supplies you have on hand. So the next time you go to Michael's or Joann's, you already know that you have 6 bins of craft paint, and you probably only need to buy that one black one that's dried up or whatever. So you're not continually overbuying. And I mean, let's be honest, sometimes the shopping is the fun part too. But if we're really trying to I guess you call it downshift, and get a more calm and peaceful and productive environment, it's really important to know what you already have.
And our glue gets dry too, by the way.
Glue gets dry. So I love clear bins with lids so that you can stack them. Also, some people, depending on the medium, they love to have like a whole wall of the cubby situation. And then you can put clear bins within those. So maybe one half is paint, the other half is crochet. I've had people who have put in entire armoires at an entire wall for fabric because they sew. They make costumes, they make blankets, they have a lot of fabric. But again, if you could just go shopping in your own space and pick out your own stuff, it's so much fun. You don't have to go to Michael's.
It's fun to go to the craft store.
Yes.
Every time I go on vacation, I go to a fabric store. I don't even go, I sightsee, of course, but fabric store is where I want to go because I like to see what they have. We have a lot of stuff. Crafters say, save your scraps. Crafters say, I have so much in my fabric stash. I have so much in my paper stash. And I get it. You collect paper. I don't do a ton of paper crafting, but I realized paper has texture and you can move it and you can turn it into something else. So, guess what? I started buying paper. Do I use it? Not so much. I have so much paper. But when you go to the craft store, they bring you in and they want you to buy it because you might want to make another project. And I don't know. I think it's part of it is just so much fun to live in that beautiful, colorful, creative space. But you also want to be productive in that space. So, talking about being productive in that space, I have so many projects laying around. So many people have so many projects laying around. I do a lot of projects for demo. So I will finish what was done and it ends up in a pile and then it ends up in my cubbies underneath my workstation. I'm like, oh, I'm going to make more of those. Those are amazing. That was easy to do. And then I have more over there and I have more over there and I have more over there and more over there. And I think I'm going to continue to make, but we get busy and we are just flowing through and flying and we never make it. So what do I do with all those unfinished projects? Really? Can I keep them all? Will I ever go back?
That's the question. Will you ever go back? And has something else taken the joy of that project? So now you're joyful about a different project. And now what those things become is a to-do, right? You don't love them as much, or you loved the idea initially, but perhaps you've moved on from that now. And that's okay. It's okay.
To-do. That's so interesting.
It becomes a to-do when you see that and you subconsciously you're like, oh my goodness, I need to finish that project. You never finish anything. And all these noises, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to take this stuff and put it under my desk.
Yeah. And then we look at it and go, wow, I should really work on that. That's such a great project. But I get it. The to-do list then becomes a monster. And then you come down to the room and you never get it done.
No. And the reality is stuffing it under the desk is a delayed decision. I don't know what I'm going to do with this right now, but I'm going to put it under here and I'll get to it later. Well, if we delay decisions for too long, we end up with very, very cluttered spaces.
Oh, you're killing me. Always. Whenever we talk, I'm always feeling bad about all the stuff I have as I look around right now and see what I need to make. Here's the thing. If we weren't so busy in our lives with our families and our kids and our friends and work, we would spend more time making things. I think sometimes it gets, I'd rather be in here just being in flow and being creative because that's my happy place, but we have life to live. So there's got to be a balance of spending time in our flow and then living our life. How can crafters and creative people find the balance they need in their life but then also find the balance in the craft room to be productive, but also with accessibility, because I want to be able to grab that fabric or the
Absolutely.
markers or the glue.
Yes, and that goes back to, if you're more organized, you're more productive. So if you have those things compartmentalized, all my paint supplies are over here, all my sewing supplies are over here, all my stamping supplies are here in these bins, then when you decide what you're going to do, you have everything at hand. It makes it so much easier for you to actually accomplish what you set out to do. And then you're not quite so distracted because you don't have it in the closet and in the cabinet and in the drawers. It's in one central place, based on the project you want to work on. And that has worked really well for my clients. Maintenance, though.
Because you are the professional maintenance? Wait, what are you talking
Oh,
about maintenance?
maintenance. Yes. It's kind of like losing weight, right? You do all that hard work and you get organized and you drop the pounds and you set up stations. And then you go back into your old habits of leaving things laying around and put in various drawers. So maintenance is super important if you like how it feels to be organized and you find it's more productive. You have to put the energy and time into setting up really good habits to put things back where they go so that next time it's easy again.
So is that how we prevent the craft room or the makerspace or the workshop from getting messy and cluttered again? Come up with a system of maintenance?
Oh, absolutely. The system is actually the underlying foundation. So whether we use bins, um, cubbies, as I mentioned, or armoires, whatever it is we decide to use as the solution, we have to make sure that the crafts go from my tabletop in back into those places. And honestly, Jane, this applies across the board. It applies in your
Mhm.
closet, in
Mm.
your pantry, in your garage. It's everywhere. So the system is the foundation. The habits are what keep the maintenance going.
I think that's great. The habits are what keep the maintenance going. How often should we be reorganizing or purging or sort of just taking a look around to see what can we do to make this organized? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly?
It varies for different people, depending on the amount of things and the type of medium you're using. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a big crochet project, you're going to have lots of skeins laying around, and you need those to finish the project. Once that project's completed, now let's look at what's left. Am I ever going to use that yarn again? They're not, all of our crafts are not created equal. And there is a lifespan for these things. Have you ever noticed vintage paper?
Yeah.
It it had a lifespan, and
Yeah.
maybe it's not in anymore. And scrapbooking, is that in anymore?
Mm.
Paper is, it changes. So being really honest about, am I ever going to use, this 2 feet of skein? Probably not. You're
So
going
what
to
do
go
we
buy more
we
for the
are gonna
next.
buy more. We're gonna buy the new
Mhm.
color. We're gonna buy a fuller, fuller
Yes.
skein of it. We're gonna start
Yes.
over. But what do we do with it? Because we have a lot of paper, we have a lot of yarn, we have a lot of fabric, we have a lot of paints. If the paints are still good, maybe we won't go back to that project. But I don't want to throw it in the garbage. I talk a lot about sustainability. I talk a lot about reuse, recycle, repurpose. So for me to take something, I don't think anyone at Goodwill wants it or the thrift store because it's an unfinished item. What do we do with it so it doesn't end up in the garbage and in the landfill?
Well, there are lots of places to donate. Kids, schools, preschools, senior centers, even think about if you have company. Why don't you have your friends come over and you do a project and you can use up some of that excess stuff? Wouldn't that be fun?
That'd be fun. That would be
We've
fun.
we've done that with paint projects. A friend is an artist and she had so many canvases and all this paint. So we did a pour paint project where you actually pour the paint
Sure.
and you shift it around, and anybody can do it and they can make beautiful things. And it was absolutely delightful and fun to do. And she got rid of a lot of things that were overflow for her.
And she was
So
ready to get rid of those.
she really was. And you know what was most cool about that is she wanted to share that everyone is an artist. You can make beautiful things.
everyone is creative. I always say that. I say, give me 1 hour of your time to be creative and then go do whatever else was on your list. But practice that, because I believe being creative also helps you mentally, physically. It helps your health because you're in a flow and it just brings your blood pressure down. And I suppose if we clean up our messy craft rooms or our creative spaces, that also will bring our blood pressure down and keep us healthier.
I have found that to be true. My whole premise is turning chaos into calm. Now, that doesn't mean every room looks like a Martha Stewart catalog or magazine, right? It
Mhm.
means that it works for you, and that when you walk in there, you're like, oh, I love this space. I cannot wait to sit down and work on this project. It's a
I
positive thing, it's not a negative thing. Yes, there's some work that goes into initially getting organized and staying organized, but it just helps things flow so much better for you.
Okay, I'm thinking already. But we need to dedicate the time to do that. So
Oh,
that's a weekend project or a rainy day project. Do we write it down? Like, how do we get started? Is it, I want to start this, or is it start in this little corner? We want to tackle the whole thing at once.
well, some of the easier things to deal with are the ones that you're not as fond of doing anymore. So, say you've decided, yeah, I'm really not enjoying painting anymore. Well, start there because that's easier. Now, if you're in the middle of a sewing project, it's not the time to start going through your fabric because you're in sewing mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is a good time to go through those paints and let the ones go that are dried up, and don't donate those things that are dried up and
Yeah.
not usable.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to go through them, and that's just not how we do things. So we want to give good things to the people who can benefit from them the most. So whatever project you're not working on, that's a good one to work in as far as purging and organizing. And time appropriate projects is a principle that I share a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are willing to allocate, say, 10 minutes to something, what can you start and finish in 10 minutes? Or
10
if you have a
minutes.
half an hour.
Uh-huh.
So if you can just allocate little blocks of time to start doing these things, it starts peeling away and you will start to feel like you're getting more organized.
You are nicer than me. I ask for an hour of creativity. You're saying 10 minutes of cleaning up. I think that's great. However, you know this. You kind of get locked in and then you get sucked in as you're cleaning something up. Or let's say you're looking through those old pictures. This is what always happens, or your
Oh,
old yearbooks. You get sucked
right.
in and then you forget what you're doing. When you're cleaning and clearing out your makerspace, your craft room, and you get sucked into, oh, well, what can I make with this? I mean, how do we stop that part of this cleaning up and cleaning out?
That is takes training. So maybe it's you set an alarm on your phone, or you put in, Pandora and have it shut off after 20 minutes.
Mm,
Whatever time capsule you've allowed yourself, you got to focus. You just have to focus. And if you find yourself getting distracted, have some grace,
mm,
but really try to come back to the goal, which is, I said I was going to get organized. I said I was going to go through this drawer of paints. So, it's just there's a lot of mind chatter that goes on around
mm,
our stuff, and really staying focused and staying in the time where you can focus is
mm.
super important. And that's why for some people who distract easily, 10 minutes is all they can do. That's fine. Do 10 minutes.
I
Do
like
10.
that too, because it's just a little bit of a start.
Mhm.
And then if you do 10 minutes the next day, it's the next start. Sometimes we say, you live with joy, you live your purpose with joy. And if creating brings you joy, you want to be in your room, you want to be able to do it. Sometimes it's painful to get rid of those things that bring us joy, whether it be in the crawl space, the garage, or in your craft room. I don't want to get rid of those paints, or I don't want to get rid of the paper because it hurts my heart because I like to make things with it. But we know that it's time to get rid of it. So how do we overcome, when you rip off the Band-Aid and you have to give it away? It's sometimes really hard.
It is hard, and very often it's tied to the money spent.
Mm,
And it's tied to, yes, but I like to do those things. But now we've brought 6 other kinds of projects into our lives that we actually want to do more. than those. And so we're getting clear about, again, what station am I at in life right now? And what do I want to do going forward? If it's tied to money, which very often crafts are, because some of those things can be quite pricey and we keep accumulating, so we spend more and more and more on them, the money's not coming back. It's not going to come back. So can you donate it to a cause that feels good to you? Can you sell it on Marketplace? Can you ship that project that's almost done to someone who will finish it for you? So again, just finding ways to release it from your space is probably the biggest challenge. But
it'll be more fulfilling in the end.
It absolutely will be. And you're benefiting other people. If you donate paints that are still good or glue sticks while they're still good, somebody can actually use them. If you wait until they're dried up, now they're garbage.
Yeah, now they're garbage.
So we want to do things in a lifespan that is creative for the people you're going to pass them on to. And using the word release instead of get rid of has a more positive connotation. So let's release some things to the people and get it back in circulation.
I love it. And then you feel release physically. You alluded to what station are you at? So talk about the train analogy. Explain what that is so we can all understand it.
Okay, so I like to describe life as being on a train, and we are on this train and we get off at different stations in life. So, we're young school children, and then we move into high school years and we get off and we do the things that high schoolers do, and then we get back on the train. And then we go into, now we'd like to go to college. What do I need for college? And so we're always moving to another train station. During those stops, we have different things that we need. So as we're getting older and as we have passed through all the other train stations, it's important to note, what train station am I at right now, where I'm living, and what do I need going forward? Not backward. What do I need going forward to support me at this station in life? Now, here's the beauty of this analogy. There are people coming up behind us who are getting off at those train stations that we have already left, that need those things that we accumulated during that period of our lives. What a beautiful way to benefit yourself by releasing these things and them who need it now. It's a great way to support people behind you.
It's fantastic. And it's so great to think about that. Do we write down, as we know, we're moving on to different stations, and I like to write things down so I can go back and look at it. Will I ever look at it in all those notebooks? Probably should release those too, right into the trash can. But when you talk about the train analogy and where we're at, would it be a good exercise to sit and sort of look at all the stations that you've been at so you can see it and know where you're at today?
If it serves you well, I tend to be one who let's move into action and then always have that rolling around in my head, right? It's always sitting there. Where am I? Do I need this? Do I love it? Part of my 4 questions in my book is, do I love it? And do I use it? And does it serve me well? And could it serve someone else better?
So your 4 questions in your book, you brought it up. So can you give us those 4?
Sure.
We're going to buy the book anyway.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so number 1, do I love it? And this is like neon flashing word love. Do I love this thing, whatever it is? And do I use it or do I wear it? Okay, so we are starting to pare down some things. I might love it, but it doesn't fit me. Or I might love it, but I never use grandma's china. Okay, so now we're starting to get really clear about what's going on with our stuff. The third one is, does it serve me well? Now, this is where the joy comes in. Do I feel great when I'm doing this project? Or do I feel wonderful when I'm wearing this outfit? Or do I feel not so wonderful? The last one is, can this thing serve someone else better? This is the permission you need to release things to others. And sometimes that's all we need is permission. It's okay to move the things through your life and into someone else's.
I love the permission. Those are great. Okay, so simplify your life. 8 simple principles to turn your chaos into calm. That's the book, people. You can get it everywhere on your website. Andrea's website,
Yes.
professionalorganizeraz.com, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, where else? Kindle. Can we get it on Amazon?
Absolutely.
Everywhere you can find books, you can find the book. We're going to talk about that in a second. I want to ask you about boxes and bins. You said you like clear bins. We already talked about, okay, we're going to label it. Organizing inside those bins and boxes, because now we've gotten rid of everything we don't want. We've released everything that's not serving us. See, I use release.
I love that.
And now we've got these clear bins, boxes. When we're organizing inside these boxes, I saw this on Instagram. A friend of mine, she does stamping. Her name is Paola Pascal, and she's amazing. And she did this whole little thing with inks, and she was putting all the like colors together, and it was sort of like her way of how these colors should be placed together. They just went in a line, and she did this whole demonstration on why she put them where she was. Is it important then, once we have these boxes, bins, and clear things, that I line up my fabrics like these are my yellows, or, the inks this way, or the papers, these are my floral, or just get it where it needs to be and then worry about that stuff later?
Okay. So, okay.
Oh boy. Here we go.
If we can get them back in the bins, I'm a happy camper. If we can get them back in there, I'm happy. If we can spend some extra time setting things up in rainbow shades, okay, whatever.
Okay.
I don't go to that extent. Some people do thrive in that environment. I don't happen to, but most of my clients don't either. They don't call me if they're that organized somehow, right? So what's most important is that they go back into that home. So the inks are with the inks. Now, fabric is a little different, especially if you work with large pieces of fabric and you're doing a lot of sewing. The reason why I do like to put those things sort of in either a patterny color, or however your brain thinks, like, I'm going to sit down and work on this project. Do you think like I want yellow with orange, or do you think I want pattern with pattern? That's the way you set up your fabric, the way your brain goes to go look for them. So sometimes it is color, and very often it is color. And I do like to see those next to each other. So when you go to work on a project, you're like shopping in your own armoire or on your own shelf. And it's great. It's a great way to kind of facilitate your sitting down and working on a project you want to do.
Okay, I'm fine with that. That sounds good. But sometimes sewers and paper crafters, save your scraps, save those scraps, especially so quilters, home deck projects. I'm always saving my scraps because I love to put patchwork this together, or patchwork that. Or if I'm cutting, if you deconstruct a sweatshirt, boy, I can use those cuffs somewhere else. Is there a save your scraps mentality? How do we modify that? And is there one bin where the scraps go, and then every now and then we just get rid of the scraps because we're going to make more?
Absolutely. And I would say a small bin. So I can't tell you how many garbage bags full of scraps I have helped discard. Because yes, I mean, you're a crafter. Somebody can use this. Teachers do this too with supplies. I can use this. Somebody's going to need this. And all the reasons why we hang on to it. Hang on to enough. Okay, not too much. Hang on to enough. So limit, maybe you have a clear bin that's labeled scraps. And when that bin is full, we either pull some out so we can put more in, or we don't put any more in. So we make the choice at that point in time. Otherwise, we're overrun with scraps. And they are useful, by the way. I'm not saying to get rid of them, not to release them until you're ready, but don't let that overtake all the projects you want to work on.
Yeah. Okay. I'm learning. I'm listening and I'm learning. We're all learning right now. We all want to hear more from you. So to do that, we are going to find you on your website.
Absolutely. It's professionalorganizeraz.com.
And we can call or email if we have questions.
Absolutely. Phone number is 480-382-1085. And the email is Andrea, Andrea, at professionalorganizeraz.com.
Andrea, can you give us one last bit of inspiration, words of wisdom as we tackle our cluttered, messy craft rooms?
I like to say done is better than perfect.
Done is better than perfect.
Let's not get caught up in the idea that our spaces need to look like some magazine or some Pinterest post, because that's not reality for most people. So let's just keep moving forward as we can, and let's take care of getting yourself organized to the point where you're comfortable.
And I say creativity is messy, but organizing is liberating.
Ooh, I love it.
You can steal it.
Thank you.
I'm releasing it to you. Andrea Brundage, everybody needs to check out your website, professionalorganizeraz.com. Of course, buy that book, Simplify Your Life, 8 Simple Principles to Turn Your Chaos into Calm. Andrea Brundage, thank you so much for joining us on Creative Living.
Live better, creatively. For more inspiration, visit janeclaus.com. Thank you for listening.